Welcome back to my channel, movie fans. It is time for another London Film Festival 2022 review, and today we are discussing She Said, which tells a real-life story of New York Post reporters Jodi Kantor and Twohey, who break one of the most important stories in a generation. A story that helped launch the Me Too movement and shattered decades of silence around the subject of sexual assault in Hollywood. This is a very tricky movie to talk about. Number one, because I'm a straight white man. I thank you very much for checking out my review, but after this one, search for female reviewers talking about this. They will give a much more personal and intimate account of how they felt about this event and this movie in specifically. Number two reason is because this film comes out at a very interesting frame of time. For many people, it can feel too soon, like we just went through the real life situation. People just came out. People are still coming out to this day about the events depicted here. But on the other hand, you also don't want it to become too late, so as not to feel like we're opening an old wound. So this film really comes out at a time where it's going to divide audiences, but I don't feel like there's a safe frame of time where this film could come out without dividing audiences and critics. It's an important topic to talk about. It's a harrowing one to talk about, and the film treats it all with candor and respect and grace. You can tell director Maria Schrader, writer Rebecca Linkiewicz, and the entire cast really have great care and respect for the victims, because this entire film is about the struggle of finding that courage to come out, balancing the pros and cons and what really is at stake for all these people after everything they suffered. Even for these journalists, played amazingly by Carey Mulligan and Zoe Kazan. You see how trying to bring this story out, trying to unmask all the shadiness happening in Hollywood as people take advantage of their positions of power, is really putting them in a bullseye. They're stalked by people in cars. They receive these strange anonymous phone calls threatening their family, and you just see how trying to balance work with all these new threats coming in and their family life, which is already complicated as it is for a lot of people, naturally just starts to get to them. The stress just begins to amount. So while it can be said that the film is formulaic, you see shades of a spotlight, you see shades of a bombshell, all blended in there, along with other issues that we'll get to, it still captures the urgency, the weight of this situation, not only from the perspective of the reporters in this gripping investigative drama, as well as the victims. And those are the best scenes in this entire film, is when we have these solemn, somber moments where our journalists are just allowing the victims to tell their story. They're constantly asking, will you tell your story? We need to tell your story. And you really get a sense of how important each and every victim is. And besides, all of their experiences are different. None of these scenes feel repetitive, despite a lot of them being one person sitting across from the next and talking and recording maybe what they're saying for the report itself. But all of them have such different experiences. All of them have such different reactions as to what happened to them. The way each victim recounts what happened to them and the fallout of it all, how they were victimized and how their lives changed from then on, feels so uniquely individual to each of them. None of it feels repetitive. That's my favorite aspect of this film, and I wish the rest of it all worked as well, because a bunch of the journalism part of it is a ton of things that we've seen before. There's nothing really distinct about it. Again, it feels too much like a spotlight. It feels too much like a bombshell. Thankfully, without all the Adam McKay funnyisms thrown in there. There's no breaking the fourth wall. There's no joke thrown in there. There's just awkward interactions, and they give away some humor, I guess, but this is not really a funny movie. This is just going through a haunting experience and a horrible truth being finally revealed into the world. There really isn't anything to fault in regards to characters and performances. Particularly Zoe Kazan has some really heartfelt work in this, where you just see her breaking apart, trying to keep herself and her family together. The film just does a really great job with its characters, but there is some clunky editing that really undermines the truism of the story. A story like this is naturally going to have emotion onto it because it's so fresh and it's so real, and we're technically still living through it. But apart from those great scenes where we get to sit down with the victims, hear them out, and learn of their experiences through their own voice, I just never felt the film was as insightful as it thought it was. There's a sense that it's tapping itself on the back a little bit with its accuracy, and having this tight grip on truism, I think, undermines a little bit of the emotional potential of the film. There's a lack of authenticity to it all when the choice of having real life footage and having Ashley Judd and Rose McGowan play themselves never really blends in with the rest of the film, and so it kind of takes away at the overall experience. And the film doesn't feel as in-depth as it should because of its formulaic nature. A lot of it is due to the editing and just doesn't interweave all the steps these characters take in a natural way. You don't feel that sense of urgency and stress up until halfway into the film, so it takes its time in getting going. And when it gets going, it's quite good, despite some strange kinks and filmmaking choices that overall just didn't work for me, but I understand the point they were trying to make. There are just scenes and moments that don't naturally flow from one to the next because you're telling the story about these two journalists searching for these victims, for the truth to come out, but you're also telling each of their family stories. The book was written by two of them, so it wants to capture their two lives that are very distinct from one another. And while they both work individually, they don't necessarily blend in together along with the investigative drama that is going on. That's the best part of the movie. That's what works best in the film's favor. But before I dive into my final thoughts on She Said, I need you to start the conversation about it in the comments below. Did you catch it at the New York Film Festival, at the London Film Festival, in theaters, whenever you find this video? Anything and everything down there. Remember to go check out female film critics talking about this film. They will give a unique perspective. But if you're enjoying my review, my LFF coverage, more reviews right here, or if you just love movies and TV, this is the place to be, so consider clicking that subscribe button and you won't miss any future conversations on your favorite movies and TV. I liked She Said. The clunky editing and script are elevated by the compelling cast collectively carrying the inherently emotional story with respectful compassion through a narrative that somewhat lacks earnestness. I'm giving She Said a B-. Those are only my thoughts on She Said. Don't forget to let me know yours in the comments below. Thank you so much for joining my LFF coverage, and big thanks to my channel members for always supporting this channel. There's more to come, and I hope to see you there. So until the next one, love each other and love the movies.